Hi, this is Isabel Litzler. How are you today for this Q&A on building your perfect career as an expat? So it's nice to talk to you. Feel free to ask questions anytime you want. The purpose of these Q&As are really to be interactive. So if you feel like asking a question out of the blue, you're welcome to post it down below and I will reply live on air. Also, if you watch this video after the fact, meaning that you see it maybe on YouTube or some other channels later on, feel free also to ask your questions. I want to make the difference between asking some general questions, which I will reply to, but if it becomes too much of a personal question that requires a diagnostic, etc., then of course, I will send you my perspective on things via email. So the process is you send me your question and then I will reply by email and let you know how I work, which I will talk a little bit later about my services and how I work. So today's topic is about expats and building your perfect portable career. So why I wanted to do something on a portable career is because I noticed that the world is going more and more digital. The world is changing. We have more and more companies nowadays that are hiring but very specific profiles. So it becomes a little bit complicated, especially as people are going to have more and more international careers. So this is always an issue, is how do I fit an international type of career, maybe also following a partner with with a job, and especially for women, who are following more than likely. Now men follow as well, but it used to be more women following, and the problem is always, well, what kind of job do I do? Now I no longer work in this space. How can I retrain myself or start something new? So my diagnostic on this is that basically it's very hard. If you've studied 10 years or 20 years to be a surgeon, and you end up having to leave, and I'll talk about a medical field, what do you do? Having to retrain again for 20 years to become a surgeon in a new country, that's not really a good idea. So the purpose of this Q&A is really to talk about what careers are really more exportable than others. So there's a three-part to this Q&A. The first one, I will talk about a career assessment. Then I will go about, Switzerland and what kind of opportunities, and finally my final recommendations. So to begin with, I wanted to talk about an assessment because this is really where it starts. I think it's very important to have an idea of where you want to go in life. And I know it's very difficult, especially for the younger generation who might be watching this video. It's extremely difficult to find what it is that you want, especially longer term, because we're very distracted now with a lot of information, whether it be online and media and what family tells us. And there's a lot of opportunities at large. I think we've never had as many opportunities, but it also comes at a cost of too much choices. Too many choices means more difficulty to choose. So, in the past, if it was like, okay, I'm 20, I'm going to this school, getting married, having children, boom, it's done. My life is all squared away. Now it's a little bit different. Well, I can do a lot of things. I can travel the world. I can get married or not, if you're planning on having a family. But then this also comes with a lot of choices and a lot of responsibility. So it becomes very difficult to find the right career that fits also with your personal projects. So that's why in my ebook, My Career, I've really made some exercises. I've built some exercises to help you define what it is that you want, which is really where it starts. What kind of life do you want? Everyone has a different idea of what they need. What type of income do you need to sustain this life? Do you want to travel a lot or not? Do you want to work full-time or not? Do you want to get married or not? So all these things I think need to be addressed, and it's part of the picture. You can't really look at one thing detached from the rest because there's consequences obviously on the rest of your life. So the purpose of this ebook, which is really not that long, is to give you some kind of direction so you can already work on some exercises. I have you think about what you've done already, if you already have a career, some visualization, what kind of life do you want, etc., so that you have more or less some options on what you want to do. So I really recommend that you read this ebook. If you're interested, you can leave a comment below and I'll send it to you via email. It's also available on my website for download, so under the About page of my website. So you're welcome to download it from there, or I can send it to you. So I think this is where it starts. It's really, especially if you want to have an international career, you want to go around, have maybe different jobs in different countries because you see yourself as a world traveler, as an international expat. It's important to understand what it is that you want in terms of how you're going to fit in your career and your personal life. So for an expatriation project, in my view, you need to plan it. I know people contact me and say, well, I want a job in Switzerland, and that's probably the case in any country. It's going to be very, very hard to actually make it happen just like this. It's going to be very difficult to say, okay, I want to go across the world. I want to work maybe, in Switzerland in a job, and, I'm going to send a resume and see what I get. Because you're not priority, etc., it's going to be difficult to do it like this. So I always recommend for any expatriation project, it is a project. So there's going to be building stones. First you want to discover the country. You want to come at least a couple of times, check it out, see if you like it. See also how things work, if it's something that you can appreciate, living there. Also see how the job scene works, especially in the field that you target. So you need to do a little bit of information seeking and studying the local market before you actually think about applying for a job in a country. And for several reasons. The first one being that your traction is going to be very low if you just send applications online. And the second reason is that you want to ensure that you actually like what's waiting for you in this country, what kind of lifestyle you're going to have, where you're going to live. The price of housing is extremely expensive, so you need to take that into account. Cost of living is expensive in general. I'm talking about Switzerland because that's my main area of work. So you need to have a period where you're going to study the market that you target. And you're not applying for a job at this stage, you're just doing information seeking. So that's really where it starts, and you need to invest a little bit in making the moves to come to Switzerland, in staying for a few weeks, going to conferences, meeting people. That's always how I recommend you find a job, even if you do follow up with an application later. But again, getting traction just an email is going to be extremely difficult. No one knows you, you're just one out of the others. Meeting people in person is always different. Even if your project doesn't happen immediately, you're making a connection. So that's really the first part where I want to insist, is really that whole preparation of your project, of your international career, is targeting the countries that you would actually like. And again, your idea of the country might be different once you're there and you actually stay for a while. You might find that maybe the opportunities are not what they seemed, or the culture is not what you thought. The language thing is something to take into account as well. So you want to really take into account all these different factors before you even think about going to a country and expatriation, to see how you would fit in and if it would be a good idea. Because I've had many expats who contacted me once they were in Switzerland, especially the person following the partner that found a job. And it was quite a tough awakening to realize, I realized this country is quite limited in terms of English-speaking jobs. I realized that there's not many companies I can pick from. I realized that there's not, the field that I have expertise is not really represented. So you don't want to find this out after the move. You want to inquire before. So if your partner gets a job, you want to be a little bit, come a little bit before and say, let's check this out for me. Would there be opportunities for me too? And if it's not the case, then maybe you want to rethink the whole project as a couple. So that's how I would do it if I could give my 2 cents in it, is do not commit to a move before you know exactly what kind of opportunities are out there for you, especially with your field of work. If you need to retrain, how much would that cost? Take everything into account before you commit to a move, because once you're in a country, and you settle there, maybe to follow a partner or what have you, you're stuck there. And that's the experience I've seen with expats, trailer spouses, so to say, or people following, is that they inherit the expatriation, meaning it wasn't a choice of theirs, they're just following somebody. Then they have to deal with the issues once they're in the country, and it's always more painful because you're inheriting the problem. It's not something you chose, knowing exactly what you were getting into. So again, recommendation is study, come to the country maybe several times before you commit to coming with a partner see what opportunities are out there. And I'm saying this from someone who's gone through the experience following somebody before knowing exactly what was there. And I was very young, so I found some interim work to do and everything, and it was in a field that was very easy to find work, but it wasn't something permanent I had as a job. I had to do small here and there, fitting the gap type of jobs, and it wasn't the most pleasant thing. It wasn't very long because in the end we ended up returning to the city where I was living. But I'm just saying, I've gone through it myself. I followed a partner and I had to deal with the situation, so I know what it's like. It's not a good thing. It's not a good idea. Now, if I was to do it again, with my experience now being a bit older, I would definitely not do it that way. So it happens to everyone. You're young, you follow a partner, it's great, you have stars in your eyes, but then when you are in the situation, it's a bit difficult. So again, prepare, think about the consequences for you, if it's a good fit for you. Be a bit selfish in that sense, think about yourself. It's important because once you're in the country, again, you're dealing with the issues. So that's the first thing. So now what I want to talk about is which jobs export well and which ones don't. So I'll start with the jobs that don't export well. Because I see many people majoring in studies that are not very flexible in terms of where you can work. So if I can in this video have an impact on, again, especially people who are thinking maybe about studying and who are not quite sure. So the first thing that doesn't export well is anything that is in the legal and medical field usually. I've seen many people in the medical field, especially doctors, I'm talking more about higher level specialists. You do need to study in the country where you are going to practice. It's very much linked to the laws. And for example, in the US, it's also linked to state laws. So it can be quite specific to where you're going to be a practitioner of your medical field. So before you become a specialist in something in the medical field, usually it takes a lot of years. So for women, again, if you have family plans, it's going to be tough. And also it's not very easy to export. So if you're a doctor in a country and you follow somebody in another, you're not going to be able to practice more than likely, which is really terrible in my view. But it's something to think about early on. Do I want to go in the medical field? Am I planning to stay where I'm at or in the surrounding areas, or do I want an international career? Then the medical field is not very exportable. Every country has their own rules, their own programs that they want you to study. So as a doctor, you'll probably have to retrain completely, which is really painful, again, in my view, especially if you've done 10 years somewhere. So not a good idea in my view if you want an international career. Medical field I would not go into, but again, that's just my 2 cents. So medical field, legal field is not very easy to export because again, it's also very much based on the legal surrounding areas. I know now there's the data protection that's a little bit more international, so people who specialize in it might have jobs a little bit more broadly, especially within Europe. But again, the legal field tends to be very much, the law of the country that you practice in. So whether you're in the criminal law or family law, what have you, divorce laws are not the same in France that they are in Switzerland, that they are in the States. So if you're a practitioner, and you follow somebody, you won't be able to practice. So you will have to retrain yourself, etc. Again, painful. So medical and legal fields I would cross out definitely if you plan on having an international career. They're not great fields. On top of that, the legal field is actually going to be more automated with artificial intelligence. So anyone that practices more as a legal support, the job may get automated in the next year. So I wouldn't see it as a very growing type of career where you can have, especially if you're young now, where you can have a future in it. So and there's already a lot of legal lawyers and all that. So it's quite busy as a field. So legal and medical, not a good idea. Public office and administration, not a good idea for international careers because it's also linked to the country. So if you're working for public office, you're dealing usually with the local laws or you're dealing with local projects for the public sector. That's not something you can pick up and do on the other side of the world because, again, whatever you worked on is not valid anywhere else. Your studies won't be valid, so it's going to also be more of a career if you plan on staying in the same country, maybe move around the same country, but in the same country. So office administration or public administration or public service is usually linked to local offices. In public service, there's also more the diplomat service, which is a little more international. So if you want to work for development or the United Nations, that's another story. That's a little bit more easy to do internationally. Anything dealing with natural resources. So if you work in oil, gas, agriculture, that's also very much local, because if you have a job as a gas engineer or oil engineer, unless you have some kind of natural resources wherever you're moving, you can't do the same job. So, it's also one of those where it's only good in the country where you have those natural resources that you can work on. So those are usually typical specialists that work in those fields, and they only have a few countries where those natural resources are exploited that they can work in as a specialist. But if they go to another place where those resources don't exist, there's no jobs for them. So I wouldn't work in anything with natural resources, exploiting natural resources, if you plan again on having an international career. And the last one that actually is quite talked about lately in different articles is retail. I've read a lot about retail really going down in terms of people visiting the malls and everything, because retail now is going more and more online. People are buying online. So if you're a salesperson in retail, or you have a boutique store, it's going more and more difficult to attract clients. People like to shop online. It's more convenient. So unless you have something that's extremely special, and you can also open offices or boutiques all over the world with that same product, I think it's also very much a localized type of thing. So retail is good, but more online retail. But retail in a boutique, a specialty boutique, might be more harder to do worldwide. So if you have, for example, a small boutique where you sell certain products, in your country, and you think, I'd like to work in Switzerland or in whatever country, you may not be able to open this boutique in the other country. Maybe it's not the type of thing that you can get a permit for to open this boutique. Maybe it's not something that sells well wherever you're going, because people have different tastes. So, I was traveling recently and I saw some stores that were selling clothes that could not be sold where I'm living now, because it's not the taste of the local community. So you have to think about those things. Something that works very well in a country may not be transferable. There's no taste for that particular product, or the laws will prevent you from selling it because it's not legal or what have you. So boutiques are not a good idea. So now that I talked about what's not a good idea, if you want to be an international worker, what is a good idea? So there's more and more jobs now that are easy to take with you in your bag. The first one that I'm a big fan of, obviously, and I talk about it all the time, is digital jobs. So jobs where you work online is what I'm doing, basically. So you have a specialty, an experience, and you're just doing it online. So you can do it from anywhere, whether you're based in France, Switzerland, the US, UK, wherever. So those jobs include marketing jobs, webmastering, that's very popular, online consulting, graphic design is a good one, also design in general, if it's something linked with the web, and IT. Those are really the jobs that you can do from anywhere. So if you get a certificate or a diploma in those jobs, you can do from anywhere. There's no graphic design is graphic design, whether you're sitting in France or in the UK or wherever. If you have a good design, if you're a good designer, and you have the customer service. I like to add this one because, again, I'm working also with other freelancers, and they're very good at what they do, but the service sometimes is not necessarily there. So it could be graphic design or webmastering or IT. So not only if you're good in your field, but you can really work with customers, you can bring them value, you're following up on your service, then you will really be a good professional. So digital jobs, I really recommend. I think they're great. I think they will really help you. The next one is functional jobs. And there we're not talking about working for yourself. We're talking about finding work wherever you're going in the world. So functional jobs are usually easy to export because they tend to be jobs that you can do with a little bit of, again, you would need to train yourself maybe more on the local specificities, but they're easy to export. And those are like human resources, finance, and anything related to operational work, because it's always the same things. You know, if I talk about HR, you know, hiring, firing, contracting, you can do, it's always the same process. Now what changes is the legal surrounding environment that you need to be aware of. Same thing with finance. You just need to maybe train yourself for 6 months, take a course, something local that will help you sell yourself to that new country. But they're quite easy to export in the sense that you know you can probably continue working and not have to do something different. So HR, finance, administration, operations are good jobs to export as long as you do a little bit of a training to localize yourself. The next one I'm really liking, actually would have been a good job actually for me too. English as a second language, teaching English as a second language. So if you're very good, you speak English, you've learned it, and you like teaching English as a second language, you can also do online. And by the way, this is something you can do for any language. So if you teach German or French or what have you, I know some people who do very well teaching French in Geneva. So you can have a package, you can have online courses, you can do workshops. So anything teaching that you can do, especially with languages, because in Switzerland it's painful to learn the languages for expats. There's German, there's French. So if you can make that process easy for someone, you have a good way of teaching that the person picks it up quickly and can be quickly functional. I think it's a good idea. And you can also do that worldwide. So if you have to move after 6 months, you can teach English in the new country you're going to. So it's very easy to export. All you need is a credential as a teacher as a second language. That's all. Very easy to get. The other thing that's easy to export is anything artistic. So meaning if you do some special crafts or products that you sell online, you can do that from anywhere as well. So anything artistic actually I think will have more value in the future. I've heard a lot of videos on the topic of what will be the jobs of the future. Some people have vision on that. One person was saying that he has a vision of 3 types of sectors basically in the future. People who are the engineering, who are the builders, people who are the in the service industry, you know, that make things run smoothly, and then artists. So I really think that's the way it's going. So either you're someone who's more of a tech person and you're an engineer, you're building the robots of the future or technology of the future, or you're someone who's just a service, you know, you're just servicing, whether it's in a restaurant or whatever service you're proposing, or you're an artistic person, meaning you're creating your own craft, whether it be in writing, design, or products that you're building yourself and you're selling them. So that's the next thing I think that's a good idea, is doing artistic. It used to be that, you know, artistic fields weren't very popular because how do I make a living out of it? You have to find an agent, you know, if you're a singer or an actor or what have you. I think now with the internet, the promotion part is made much easier. You can easily put a piece of your music or your writing online and people see it and then they want to work with you. So I think it's making, actually our world is making it easier for artists now to sell their crafts. And there's websites that are really designed for that particular purpose, to help artistic people build their knowledge and also build their followers. So it's really a good, easy to export field. Maybe not one that you can make money immediately, but if you find the right channels and you market yourself properly, it's something that that you can actually make some kind of a living with, or at least to get started. So that's one that I see as growing. And the last one, which is probably the toughest one to build, but very international one, it's the entrepreneur. So someone who has an idea and who finds a way to market their services or their products online and build really a company, and you don't have to be in one location. If you're managing, for example, you know, website, you can be sitting anywhere in the world and your website runs without you present. You can even have employees in different countries running it for you. So entrepreneur is the easiest way to have an international lifestyle. You know, you can live from anywhere, delegate. But again, meaning by delegating, I don't mean forgetting about it. I mean, you have to follow up the delegation, but you can easily subcontract some parts of your work to locals who know and understand the local rules. And then you can have this international career basically where you're just running things from distance. But it's a mindset, you know, running things from a distance is not made for everybody. And even I, for example, I'm in a situation where I can work from anywhere, but I like to have some kind of a control on the things that I do. So even when I'm in a different location, I just feel like my computer is not in the right place and people are not necessarily in next time zone, etc. So it takes some being used to. So if you start and you've never experienced it before, even though it seems easy to have delocalized lifestyle and move things, run things from abroad, it seems easy in theory, but you realize quickly that you need some getting used to. You have to think about all the different things, you know, long distance, meaning different time zones. I had an incident, for example, where my website was down and I wasn't in the same time zone. I was very nervous about it, couldn't reach anyone. So things like that, you know, you realize, okay, you know, how do I manage globally? How do I make sure that things run smoothly when I'm not around, that people get an answer to their message, etc. So there's a good book, actually, The 4-Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss. He's very good with efficiency. So if you're thinking about being an entrepreneur, you want to read about how to build an online business, Tim Ferriss is a good resource. The 4-Hour Work Week. He's also written many books since then about same thing, being more efficient. I think it's called Tools of the Titans. So he's a good resource. But that's basically the last job in my list of what to do to have an exportable career is an entrepreneur. So that's a very good one. So any questions before I keep going? Just making sure the light is okay. It's very dark today. So if there's no questions on the topic of the exportable career, I'll move straight into my services, how I can help you build this international career. So I have two kinds of services basically. I have my career package, which has been around now for a while. It's very good for expats who want to find a job or build an activity. It's also good for freelancing because the way it's built is that you get online materials which are the same base for everybody, so you connect and you can actually watch the videos, you can download a lot of materials, for example listing of companies, which I have a new listing I'm going to build and add to the package right now. So which companies hire global people, English speakers, things like that. Resources such as which websites are good when you're looking for a job in Switzerland, and finally contacts. This helps also time and money and effort and everything. So which contacts can help me get closer to the kind of job I'm looking for in Switzerland. This is only available with packages because it's my personal contacts. So I want to make sure that people are well prepared to get in touch with the contacts. That's important to have the proper resume built, the LinkedIn profile, etc. That's why I included in the package. So that's the full services package with 4 hours of coaching. And also I can build a customized package as well. And then there's the on-demand services, which are a little bit more the quick question answers. You know, I have a few queries and I just need a bit of help. And that's on demand basically. I need an email answer to my question, or I want to spend 1 hour with you on Skype to talk about my issues. And really a lot of career problems can be resolved in 1 hour. I mean, some people have for me it's very easy because I've been doing it many years. So a problem that seems big for you, I can probably resolve in 1 hour. So that's why if you think that, well, you know, I'm not sure I want to invest in a career package, but I think I have a few questions that have really been bothering me. You know, if it's a few questions, chances are, again, I can probably solve it in 1 hour. And then you can move forward. Maybe that's what's keeping you away from building your perfect job or your perfect activity. So again, I think even half hour is possible. So if you have a quickie, you know, just one question or a few questions, don't hesitate. I think it's you're going to be quite happy with getting some direction, at least to get started, career guidance. So that's all available online. I'll post the link below on playadhc.com. You're welcome to send me an email also before you commit to a service and saying, look, you know, this is my issue. Do you think it's more an on-demand type of service, or is it more of a career package service? And I can answer that for you. So that's it for these services. So now moving straight into what are some of the biggest growth in Switzerland? Which sectors are, you know, good sectors to get into, or, you know, especially those of you who want to work in Switzerland, how to build yourself for the Swiss market. And again, going back to what I was saying earlier, it's very important to understand the local market that you're targeting before you move or before you study. And I know people tend to be overexcited about studies, but studies are not necessarily the answer to your career direction or project. Career projects should also be built knowing a little bit more about the economy, and this is where I think our educational system is limited there. You go to class and you study materials, but where is your knowledge of the market? What do you know of the companies that are in your local market and what they need? And that's how you find a job, is basically by answering a demand, replying to a demand. So in terms of Switzerland, the markets that are growing is e-commerce. So in Switzerland, you find also, and that's why some boutique shops are closing right now. I've seen it a couple of weeks ago in the stores. A lot of those boutiques that have been there for a long time are closing because there's more and more activity as e-commerce. So people are going into opening their online websites in Switzerland, and people are also catching up to that habit of buying online. So if you're planning of maybe starting a business online, Switzerland right now is the ripe moment to do it, because there's not enough people doing it. For example, like in the UK or the US, where it's been there now for a long time. In Switzerland, it's still, market is ripe for that, for now starting your business now. So e-commerce is growing. If you have an online, if you have a boutique, think about doing it online as well, or an online store. People are more and more encouraged, or I think they're getting into the habit of buying online as well. The second growing area is fintech. So fintech is a little bit specific. Switzerland is known for finance, of course, and banks and financial services. But now there's this growth with building that with technology included. So it's not just opening a bank like another bank, or financial services. Now they're adding some technology where you can do a lot of things on a website, on an app. So you have people that are building these apps and these products where you can do more with your financial services. So now you have a lot of companies that are getting into this niche of having an app, and you can do your account on your telephone. You can run all your accounts, you're putting money into it, paying people, knowing where you stand, making loans even. So they're called the neobank in France, for example. In Switzerland, I'm not sure the exact term, but they're basically, the banks of tomorrow, and financial services of tomorrow. Blockchain as well is a big one in Switzerland. So if you happen to be in Zug, for example, it's a huge hub, growing hub for blockchain. Also Geneva is quite a big hub. So think about that, how your career, maybe if you're in financial services, could go into those sectors. The third one is digital marketing. So more and more now a demand for digital marketing, but also more and more people wanting to get into digital marketing. It's very specific. A lot of people think that they know digital marketing because maybe they've helped a friend, or it's a trade. You have to be trained for it. It's not just posting a photo on Facebook. It's also running campaigns, understanding your client, understanding statistics also on Google, what those statistics tell you. It's a job. If you want to build a career in something useful, I think looking at digital marketing would be good. But if you were to do it professionally, take a class in it, get certified, and really start doing it. So just be on, offer your services for free for small companies or freelancers, to just get yourself used and understanding how the web works, because it's very tricky. People who are in this business always try new things and test different campaigns. You need to be a practitioner. So I see a lot of people who are theorists, meaning that they've taken the course, they have the certificate, but when I talk to them about the dynamic part of it, they're lost. So they don't have the practice. And I think the way you get the practice, I can only see one way, is you offer your services at the beginning, because you need return of experience to know, what you're doing good, what you're not doing good, knowing that the web changes all the time, SEO changes and all that with Google. So you need practice to be a good digital marketer. So that's what I would recommend. The fourth one that's growing and really in demand right now in Switzerland, if you're thinking about what should I do to get a job, engineering. If you're an engineer, especially an IT engineer, you're going to get a job for sure. There's a lot of demand. and there's not enough resources locally. So if you're sitting outside of Switzerland, but you have this kind of technicity, you have your chances to find a job. So engineering is definitely a wanted type of sector, and it's not going to go down in terms of demand, because especially IT engineering, there's a big request. People are building their websites, they need experts, etc. The next one is information, R&D, and innovation. So anything that's linked to research and development. So again, all these things I'm telling you, it's also based on the research that I've done with some placement agencies. I've run some figures on that, and that's what they came up with also as the biggest areas of growth. So it's available. So I can send you the link, but it's in French, so if you want to read it through, it was a study that was done. So information, R&D, innovation is also big right now. So if you in the sector of innovation, maybe in a hub, and you've built very good projects, but again, the keyword there would be, what have you done? Because anyone can say, yeah, I've worked in innovation, I've created a new inbox, or something like that in a folder on my email. That's not innovation. Innovation is really you worked on something very specific, maybe for a multinational. So think about that, what you could bring to Switzerland, because they're looking for innovators right now. They're looking for people who can do things differently within corporate sector. The corporate sector right now tries to reinvent themselves, because there's a lot of startups. So startups, their goal is to do things differently and to switch things around so that they can, maybe do a service quicker or do something differently. So now the corporate sector, which is a little bit slower, I would say, and have been doing things the same way, maybe with some level of success, but now they're realizing if we want to catch up with the startups and we don't want our business to go down, we need to also reinvent ourselves in our own way. So the big companies are also looking for people who can do this kind of work. So if you're someone in innovation, a consultant or something like that, you have your chances to get in a corporate sector in Switzerland. Of course, HR management and training. I thought I was smiling when I saw this in the research. It's quite interesting because HR, basically human resources, used to be, especially in Switzerland, a little bit of a dusty sector, where HR was basically there to do the contracts, hire the people, very static. And now I think it's changing a little bit. I've seen the last couple of years. So I ended my practitioner of HR in 2012. That's when I was the last seen, I would say, as an HR practitioner. I mean, since then I've been doing consulting for career transition. So I realized that, HR until that stage was very much of the legal contracts, etc. But now I see that HR is also trying to catch the wagon of innovation. So trying to do things differently, finding the competencies that you need, training people, etc. So if you're in a talent management, basically, your chances are better now than it was 5 years ago, for example, because now there's a real need of having people that are very good at innovation, that can do things differently and bring value differently. So HR management and training are growing in the Swiss market. And the final one that's also growing in Switzerland, and it will grow actually all over Europe, it's GDPR. So if you're someone working with the data privacy, whether it be in the legal part or in the IT part, because obviously it would have as a consequence that companies will have to invest more in their infrastructure. So if you're in that field, you will have a job basically, and also anything with security. So if you work in the field of IT security, building architecture, all that stuff, GDPR is going to bring you a job basically. So there are some new jobs, as you see. Some will be less demanded, and those are the ones that you can easily automate. So again, if you're in operations, admin, basic, data handling, I would say, more and more computers will do this work automatically. But if you're someone who's more of an innovation, you've done work with innovation, you've done work with the new data privacy sector, etc., you can find something probably a little bit easier. So those are the jobs of tomorrow, or the jobs where you can find something. Hi, Anna. I see a question from Anna. Hello, Isabel. Hi to you. Thank you for your interesting presentation. Could you send me the link of the research? Absolutely. Yes, of course, I will. Again, it's in French, that's why I took some of the elements there. I'm not going to say the name of the agency that did the research because I don't want to promote anyone in particular, but I will send you the link in French, and you can go through it for sure. Let me see. Okay, so it's not just the research and development study, it's more about the sectors hiring basically, and part of those sectors are HR and training and development, just to clarify. Any more questions before I move to my last section? Thank you. Okay, so my last section is about final recommendations. So what I would, so here I'm always looking at it as more like I'm a friend or someone who helps out basically, and that's how I do my consulting basically. I'm not the type of person who will tell you what you want to hear. I am the type of person who likes the truth, so I will tell you the truth. You know, if people say what are my chances of getting a job and this is my resume, you know, I'm not paid to tell you something that makes you feel good. I'm here to tell you what it's like, and I think that has more value in my view than just telling you what you want to hear. And also it has more value because it will help you move to your next step. So again, my consulting is always very much straightforward, honest. You know, the idea is that you learn something from it and you grow from it. So final recommendation as your non-nonsense type of consultant. So the first one is to choose a digital career if you can. So if you're right now thinking, well, I'm not sure what I want to major in as a student, or I'm not sure what I want to do, I would say pick a digital career, something you can do online, because this is basically the way of the future. And if you are in a situation ever where you need to move for whatever reason, your job is going with you. So you don't have to say, okay, now I'm going to have to retrain myself for 10 years. So a digital career, in my view, is good. Now, if you're not sure which digital career, you can inquire about that. You know, I've mentioned some things. Marketing, IT, etc. Do some more research on it. Find out what it's like, what the work is like. You know, what technically you would have to do. Of course, I forgot to talk about developers. They're quite in demand also right now. It includes some coding, so you have to enjoy coding a computer. It's a little bit less creative than, for example, being a copywriter, where you can use your writing skills for websites, for example. So there's a lot of things you can do. I think the great thing about digital jobs is that basically it takes into account all the skills that you could have. So if you're more creative, I'm sure you can find something. If you're more technical, you can find something. So there's a job for everybody on digital, basically. The second recommendation, I would say, choose a job that is not linked to country-specific environments. So if you're now researching for a job, you know, and you find that there's a local legal aspect, you know, you need some kind of certificate, etc., be sure that you will need the same certificate elsewhere. So if it takes you 2 years to get a local certificate in something, again, I'm taking my example of doctor, or, you know, something more technical locally, you can be sure that if you move countries, you will have to redo it. So, you know, be sure what you want to, that's why I'm saying think about it early on. You know, is it something that, or you're willing to retrain in something, which, you know, most of the time people are not. And what happens is they will target something lower. So I've seen many women, and again, I'm saying this from my experience, many women that are doctors in their country, and they come to, you know, Europe or what have you, and they have to take something lower. So you end up being trained as a doctor, and then you end up being a nurse or something a little bit lower, where you're not actually practicing anything you've learned. So it's a little bit of a pity in my view. Same thing with teaching. Teaching English as a second language, you know, teaching things like that. But if you go for public school teaching, and you have to go for, you know, specific diplomas to be a public school teacher, be sure that if you go to another school system in another country, you will have to redo the whole spiel, or at least equivalency. So that's why I'm saying I would put it on digital from the beginning. You know, find your own students online, you know, do your own teaching online, because if you have to go through the public school system, it will probably be a little bit complicated. So teaching only if you're doing it on digital, I would say, is worth it, otherwise complicated. Choose a job that you can do from anywhere. So if you have a job right now, see the potential of exporting it. Is it something you can pick up in your bag and start tomorrow, in another location? What would be, and assess that right now if you're planning on being an expat or traveling a little bit. What do you need to do right now to make that happen? So if it's a project of yours, you want to be an expat, you want to travel the world, how exportable is your job basically? So yeah, that's one way to do it. If you're not sure of what you can do in terms of exporting your job, we can run that together. We can look at it together. So if you're right now thinking this is what I do, Isabel, what do you think of that? Can I export this in 3 years, for example? And maybe there's just some training you can do between now and then to export your job and be free. That's my view of it. If you can work from anywhere, you're really free. If you have to work in only one location, you're not entirely free, because then your boss, your company, whoever can tell you bye-bye, and then you can go anywhere else because you can export it. So you're a bit stuck to one country, which is limiting your market. So that's it. And the last one, choose a job where you have growth potential. So if you pick a career, make sure that you have it's almost like different levels of exportation and levels of growth. So, if you're a secretary, and again, I don't want to make that a generality because I started as an admin assistant and I'm not shocked or anything to say it, but I have started my career as an admin assistant. Now I've moved in such a way in my career, which I talk about in my about section, where I've tested different things, and it's almost like I don't know how I got to where I am right now a little bit, because I've done so many different jobs. But in a way, that's what brings me value with my career now, being an expert in expat careers. But if you think about, okay, how can I make the right moves? Make sure that you choose a job from the beginning that's easy to grow from. So if you start again as an admin assistant, it's not the ideal, because usually, especially if you want to have an exportable careers with a company, because technically companies are not very easy buyers of making you grow, So in other words, when you enter at a certain level, companies are not going to make you go up easily. I mean, especially if you're non-professional, so they tend to separate the two. So you have the admin staff and then you have the others. So if you're starting as admin staff, in the UN is a good example where there's really a difference between the two, and it's hard to make that move. So if you want a growing career, basically, if you want to grow into being a professional, etc., I wouldn't recommend, now again with the past experiences I've had and my own experiences, I wouldn't recommend starting as an admin assistant, because start a little bit higher than this so that you can grow it from there. It takes a little bit of preparation, but I think the difference between when I started my career and people starting their career now is that you have a lot more resources. Because when I started my career, it was pretty much of a, well, let's see, what kind of major should I do? Well, this one looks good, and yeah, I'll do this work. And there was no real support. I mean, you went to school, you picked potentially the best major that you could. Then you looked for a job and you hoped everything fall together. So there wasn't such thing as coaching or mentoring, or, people on YouTube now sharing a lot of information as well. It didn't exist. So you just have to be your best decision maker yourself. Hopefully your family is advising you not too bad. So it was a lot of things that you didn't get support on. Now I think people are a lot luckier because they do have resources. So they can type online, they can research, they can ask questions, they can go to professionals that have experience as well, that can help them not make the mistake. So there's really no way right now, there's really no reason why people make mistakes right now, because there's enough resources to not make the mistakes. So there's enough people telling you, don't go into these fields, it's not a growing field, or start in this sector, etc. So I think it's easier now to manage a career, and it's less of a trial and error, I think, than in the past. So I hope this was helpful in terms of content. Again, the idea with this Q&A is really to help you find the right opportunities that you can take with you, because I really believe that the world is going more and more digital and international with globalization. So you need a career that you can take with you in your bag. You need to be mobile. That's going to be a huge asset if you want to grow in a company and be marketable. So especially if you're younger and you're just starting out, I think this video will be very helpful for you to prepare in the right way, you know, so that you can avoid the painful mistakes and having to retrain yourself and all that stuff. So I think it will be helpful. Any other last questions before I tune out? Of course, you can always ask them later. So I had the question from Anna. I don't see any questions online. Feel free to ask. Again, this video will be available on all my different social media platforms. And feel free to share with your friends as well, especially the ones that are confused on their career and majors and studies and all that stuff. I think this will be beneficial for them and their parents. So I hope you have a great day. I will talk to you soon. Thanks.